Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. So in this video today, I'm going to be talking about the top 12 hardest champions to play in Season 9. Now obviously everybody has their own personal list of which are the hardest champions in this game. However, I think that my list is one of the most accurate ones that you can find on the internet nowadays. So let's not wait any longer and start with the top 12. So the first one I got on the list is Nidalee. Nidalee is not a very hard champion to master in terms of mechanics. I think we can all agree to the fact that if you play Nidalee 10 times, then you should be able to understand how her transformation works, as well as the rest of the mechanics. If you are really good at hitting the skill shots and you don't want to play a champion that takes a lot of time to learn the mechanics, Nidalee is definitely a choice that you could go for. However, the problem that Nidalee has is that you are being forced to create a lead in the early game. If your jungle path is not being very optimal, the chances are that you are going to fall behind. She does not have a crazy jungle clear just like every other jungler has. The next problem is that Nidalee doesn't really scale into the mid-late game, so only consider playing Nidalee if you know how to make a lead in the jungle. Going over to the next champion, we've got Gangplank. I think it's very clear to why Gangplank is on this list. There's two reasons to why Gangplank is one of the hardest champions to play in this game. The first reason is that Gangplank has one of the worst early games in the whole game. He is currently being played as a top laner and a mid laner, and almost any champion in those two lanes will counter Gangplank. If you are very good at surviving in the lane, then Gangplank is definitely a champion that you could play. The second thing that makes Gangplank so hard and so difficult is because of his barrels. I have played Gangplank a lot of times and I have never managed to control his barrels. When you are in the heat of the moment in a team fight and you need to hit those barrels, it is so difficult. If you ever manage to learn Gangplank and you are being able to master him, you will definitely be rewarded in solo queue. Moving on to the third champion on this list, we've got Teemo. This is definitely not a troll, guys. Teemo is definitely not very hard in terms of mechanics, but being able to carry a game as Teemo is something so difficult to do. It's not very hard to win the lane as Teemo, but the thing is, what are you going to do outside of the laning phase? The only option that you have is to go and split push, as teamfighting is definitely something you don't want to do as Teemo. But even with that being said, in some games you simply won't be able to split push for 24/7. There's also many other champions in the mid-late game which will outshine Teemo at some point. Literally the only thing that Teemo can do is win the lane and then shine afterwards, but not for too long. Moving on to champion number 9, we've got Draven. So Draven is a very hard champion to pick up because it all depends on you picking up the axes. This is something that you could learn in the practice tool. However, even after spending hours into the practice tool and learning how to pick them up, if you go into a real game, it's so difficult to watch the minimap as well as picking up the axes. Literally, the only way to master this is simply by playing thousands of games with Draven and try making it a habit to look at the minimap as well as picking up the axes. Just like Gangplank, if you manage to master this with Draven, you will get rewarded very well. The next champion on the list is Calista. So Calista has three things that makes her so difficult. As for somebody that has played a lot of Calista in the past, she is very hard to control with her jumps. Only one step in the wrong direction in a teamfight is all what it takes to lose a whole teamfight. If you ever want to get into Calista, you have to learn how to bunny hop correctly. The second thing that makes Calista so difficult is that you have to calculate how much damage you're going to do with the spears. If you miscalculate and you use your E in a teamfight or when you are in the lane, you will have to wait for a very long time, as her rend, which is her E, is going to be on a very long cooldown. Since this is her main source of damage, you don't want to mess this up. As for the third thing that makes her so difficult is her ultimate. It's no problem to call a support out to do a knockoff for you, but the decision making in when to use your ultimate to call out your support for a knockup or for an engagement, this could easily tell the difference between a good Calista player and a bad Calista player. And this could also be the difference between winning a game or losing a game. Moving on to number 7, which is Anivia. Anivia is simply one of the hardest mid laners that you could ever play in the mid lane. Her abilities that she has works in combination with each other. If you cannot place her wall correctly or you don't know how to use her ultimate properly, you're not going to have a fun time in your game. Outside of her abilities and everything, she also has a very bad early game. Her damage is really not that bad in the early game, but the thing that makes her so bad is that she's always being mana hungry. If you don't get the blue buff from your jungler, you're gonna have a very hard time in the laning phase. So outside of learning her abilities and getting to know her, you have to be as efficient as you possibly can when farming. But that's not the only problem that she has. The one final problem that Anivia has is that her auto attacks are very bad to last hit with. This is why Anivia is a must for on the list on number 7. Moving on to the next champion we've got on the list, we've got Rumble. Rumble is easily on the list for number 6 for 2 reasons. The first reason is his overheating. I have played against so many Rumble players and I have never seen anybody that can control their overheating. If you cannot control this overheating, you won't be able to maximize Rumble's damage. You will always have to stay focused and know exactly when to use an ability. Also, about a year ago, Riot has released a patch where Rumble had an update, and even with that update, they made it even harder to control his overheat. This is the reason why Rumble is now a forgotten champion, but it's still worth on being on the list for one of the most difficult champions. Anyway, the second reason to why Rumble is one of the most difficult champions is something to do with his ultimate. A lot of people say that this ultimate is very hard to cast. You must use your ultimate and give it a direction. The thing is, a lot of people don't actually understand how to do that. Moving on to the next champion on the list, we've got Lee Sin. So I think we can all agree to the fact that Lee Sin is one of the hardest champions to play in the game. Not only in terms of mechanics, but also in terms of playstyle. So he's got around 7 abilities and you have to learn how to use the insect kick, you have to learn how to do the flash kick, you need to learn how to jump with wards, and yet there are so much more that I didn't even talk about. Also, Lee Sin doesn't scale into the mid-late game, so just like Nidalee, you are being forced to win the early game or else you will become useless. Moving on to the next champion, we've got Azir. Once again, just like all of the other champions on the list, Azir has one of the hardest mechanics for you to learn. When you play Azir, it all depends on you playing with the soldiers. It has a very different playstyle from many other champions in the game, and this is what makes Azir so difficult to play. Also, over the course of many years that Azir exists, the Azir one-tricks have found a new way to do like an insect kick just like Lee Sin. This one is also very hard to pull off and will take you quite a bit of time to practice. Outside of Azir mechanics, Riot has also been nerfing Azir quite a bit lately, which made him have the worst win ratio in the game right now. This makes him definitely one of the hardest champions in the game to master. Moving on to the next champion, we've got Yasuo. Yasuo earns the spot on number 3, and I don't really think I have to explain to why Yasuo is being there on the number 3 spot. Do you want to play a champion that requires endless of improving? Then Yasuo is the perfect champion that you should pick up today. Except if you don't want teammates to hate on you in the games, then I would not recommend Yasuo. Moving on to champion number 2 on the list, we have got Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol earns the number 2 spot because this champion is so hard to play. I have respect for all the people that play Aurelion Sol. This champion is so difficult to master. You always have to position very well if you want to have an impact on the game. For a lot of the players, this is something very hard to do and very hard to pull off. If you are looking into a champion that will reward you for playing a lot of games and getting better, then Aurelion Sol is the perfect champion that you are looking for. It's super scary to play against a very good Aurelion Sol player because these people are often really good at pressuring the map. Anyway, getting into the last champion that earns the number 1 spot for being the hardest champion in League of Legends, we've got Riven. So in my opinion, Riven really deserves the number 1 spot for the video. There are people which are playing this champion for over 3 years and they are still learning how to play Riven. Improving with this champion is endless. There's so many things you can do with the animation cancelling and so much more. In my opinion, there has never been another champion that is more difficult than Riven, even after so many years. Anyway, with the last champion being said, this was it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed my top 12 hardest champions to play in season 9. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. If you are new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and like. Also, if you want to see high elo Riven gameplay, don't forget to follow my stream. And also don't forget to join my Discord channel, guys. I will see you guys in my next video, man. Peace.